Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. We're going to wait just another minute to give everybody a chance to kind of wrap up from lunch and join us, and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we've reached a bit of critical mass, so we'll go ahead and get going. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today as we discuss budgets, booking windows, and embracing new technology. I'm Nicole Adair, Director of Revenue Management Services here at SHR, where I oversee our team of experienced directors of revenue management as we work with our clients on improving and advancing their revenue generation and distribution strategies. I've been with SHR for a little over 4 years now, coming from corporate level hotel management in the Hawaii market. I'm joined today by my colleague, Christy Crawford.
Hello.
Christy joined our team in 2016 with almost 2 decades of revenue and property management experience, holding roles that range from general manager to OTA market manager to VP of revenue management. She's also served as president of HSMAI's Gulf South chapter and has been an adjunct professor in hotel and resort management. So our goals for you in this webinar are pretty straightforward. Over the course of the next half hour or so, we hope you'll walk away with some more insight into your budgeting process, how to refine your approach to combating the ever-shortening booking windows that we're all dealing with, and why it's so important that you embrace new technology. And first, it is just about every hotelier's favorite time of year, budget season. And my first question to you as you begin to embark on this process is, are you really looking at the right information? So Christy, I'm going to kick that over to you. What are some of the first things you think it's really important for any hotel to evaluate when sitting down to start the budgeting process?
Thanks, Nicole. I think it's always important to take a look at your surroundings, your market, to really look at what new inventory you have in the market, but not only just new units, what's coming online within the next year. You have to keep in mind you're budgeting a year out, so you may have a hotel that's scheduled to open in June or July of the following year, and you definitely have to take that into account. But also, what brands are in the market that may not have been in the market this year or previous year, conversions that may now be in your comp set that weren't before. When we look at, for instance, Starwood, with Marriott acquiring Starwood, all of a sudden, the Starwood hotels had a lot more inventory that shared the same loyalty program. So you definitely have to take a look at that. And then also what special events happen this year that won't necessarily repeat next year, or vice versa. Did you have Super Bowl this year and you won't have it next year? Did you have major events or special events, even if it's not good events, hurricanes, snowstorms? What did you have this year that won't repeat next year, or what's on the calendar for next year that you have to take into account because it didn't affect revenue this year?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, because the special events and how they change are so important and have such an impact on your transient demand and expectations. So there's the big events, big holidays that you would always be taking into consideration, like where did Easter fall this year and where will it fall next year? Was your Labor Day Saturday in August this year and it will be in September next year? You know, really looking at the calendar and figuring out where all those core holidays that really impact demand are going to fall and how that's going to be different than they were this year. But don't forget to look at compression events that happen throughout the year as well and factor in the potential to transient expectations when they don't repeat. So maybe you had some big citywides this year that aren't repeating, or this year you had a very slow week and you're expecting a big citywide next year. In the case of major compression events in your current year, what's going to happen next year over that week if they're not repeating? Will the demand overall drop but expect the rates to hold? Will you get some infill on the transient side, but it will be coming at a much lower rate because you don't have that group base and that larger, higher rated demand. These are all reasons why it's so critical also that you're budgeting day by day versus evaluating only the monthly totals, because it can be really hard to get a true picture of how those fluctuating events are going to impact your ability to produce in different segments if you're only looking at monthly totals. So that's enough about special events. What about new business campuses, Christy?
Well, this may be where you need to bring in your sales department as well with any major business campuses that may be opening or closing. Did you have businesses that may have been doing some consulting work this year that may not carry over into next year? Did they leave the market altogether? Or just maybe even scaling down the amount of work that they had this year as compared to new? If you have companies that have just opened, they'll bring in opening teams. That type of business will also scale down next year as compared to this year. And then when you look at venues, it may be related to sports venues, it may be related to concerts, or just open air events. You have to keep in mind what that schedule is and how it will affect this year versus last year. And then one of the things, Nicole, we also talk about are your online reviews and your placement trending, because we all know that your position on TripAdvisor or your rating on the OTAs can affect your overall placement of your hotel, and maybe how much your ADR is affected by your review scores. The higher the review scores, usually the higher you can charge for the guest. And so not only look at your scores, but look at the scores for your comp set as well. Or is your comp set trending up or down? And that may affect what you think you can charge or what your rate strategy may be.
That's a really good point. And I know the number that I've seen get thrown around in research before is that for every 1 point you go up in your review score, you can charge an extra 11% in rate without any impact to your occupancy or demand. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Like you said, both your review score and also how you are comparing against your comp set, and how even if yours is going up, if your overall placement against your comps has actually sorted downward, that's still going to be a negative impact to you and your expectations for next year.
And it may be a good time to review your actual comp set.
Right.
If their review scores have gone up or down, are they actually still in your comp set? Did they move out of it by going up? Did they move out of it by going down? So make sure that when you're looking at the comp set, those are still the hotels that you would consider your competition.
Right. That's a really good point. Not that we want to add any extra work for any of our hoteliers onto the budgeting season, but it is a good time to keep that in mind. And you're going to be looking at a lot of the same data, or a lot, and considering a lot of the same things that you would when looking at your comps. So it can be something to layer in as well. And one other thing, just circling back a bit to talking about the major business campuses, opening and closing, consulting, things like that. I always like to encourage my properties for your accounts, especially the larger accounts or where you have a really good relationship, reach out to them and see what they're expecting for the next year. Do they anticipate a growth, maybe a reduction? How are they being impacted by the market? We have some major things with Brexit later in the fall, continuing trade wars, things like that, that may really be impacting how a lot of these corporate accounts are looking at their travel budget for 2020. So it's great to try and work those relationships a bit and reach out and really get that market knowledge as well from the people that are already producing for your hotel. And then lastly, what you really want to look at, and I always encourage hotels to not only budget day by day, but really to do it segment by segment. And I know it's a painful process, but it's really the best way to get an accurate and achievable and reasonable budget for the next year, which I know is always every revenue manager's goal, that reasonable part. But look at which segments have grown year over year, which have declined. Now that you have all of your baseline expectations mapped out, this is really important so you know and can decide on your specific strategy moving forward for each segment. And you can fit that into your budget and see how they're performing and how that's going to impact your business mix. because that will have a strong impact on your ADR and your overall occupancy expectations. So once you have your groups, your corporate, your knowledge, your new inventory, you really need to sit down and look at your segmentation and how that is growing and changing year over year. Right, so next question is, what type of reports should I and my team be looking at to accomplish what you and Christy have just been discussing? So I'm going to kick that over to Christy to kind of review our recommended checklist of reports and data sources.
Thanks, Nicole. So these are the reports that I would just start with, and you may have other ones and you may want to tweak these a little bit, but I think this is kind of the bare, what I would go with is first the CVB calendar. And you can get that, you can call the CVB, get on their email mailing list, which is always a good thing. And then some CVBs as well do a state of the pace meeting toward the end of the year, so they can let you know what major events or conferences or citywides that they may have coming in for next year. Also the holiday calendar. So the large holidays, but also keep in mind the smaller holidays and also the government holidays. So whereas you'll still be working with you have some hotels that are maybe business or government heavy, that around the government holidays, you may not have the travel before or after. And then also school holidays and school breaks, because you see a lot of times you don't have a lot of business traveling around the school holidays or right when summer begins or right when summer ends, spring break, Easter, fall break, all of those related to the schools and universities, and how does that affect your hotel and what you're going to forecast. I would look at the sports and major events calendar as well, which could be wrapped up into the CVB. It could be a separate with the Tourism and Travel Board, but what sporting events will you have in that area? And then major events, concerts, anything that may affect your placement. And keep in mind that not only the big sporting events, but maybe just the kids' baseball, soccer, lacrosse, some of those events that could be some good weekend filler business. And then your corporate account production, again, with sales, and Nicole mentioned what accounts have produced, which ones may be ramping up, which ones may be ramping down. And it could be a good time to get on the phone with those corporate contacts to see what their expectations are for next year. And then also the list of repeat and new corporate accounts. So can you count on those businesses coming back next year? Will they expect a decrease in rate because they've been with you for 2 years? Do you think maybe you can push the rate up a little bit based off of the market demand? The STAR report. So we all get the STAR report weekly and we look at it, but what new supply is coming into the market? Do you want to invest in the industry segment trend report that STAR puts out each year? And then also the Hotel Lodging Association. Usually you can get some really great local information. There's a membership sometimes involved, but they do send out a lot of free reports as well. And if it's something you really want to get but haven't considered the membership, that might be a time to reach out to some of your friends at other hotels and see what HLA reporting that they may have.
Yeah, and those are all really good reports, especially those last ones. And I would just like to add, this is by no means, as Christy said, a definitive list. You have PKF, you have reports from CBRE, but even if you don't have the budget to purchase that level of reporting, you can look at even your OTA extranets will give you some kind of market data, some more broad comp set data. And obviously that's just a snapshot because it's from that one channel. But there are a number of low cost or free resources as well that you can use to at least kind of get an indication of where the market tends to be going. And even your market managers can be a good source if you have a good relationship with them. They're someone that you can approach as well.
And they love to share that type of data, especially if they're trending in the right direction. But not only keep in mind looking at production, but you also want to know how's the rate trending in your area. And then also for looking at OTAs, what's the market segments that are trending? Are packages up? Or opaques up? Or just standalone? So there's a number of getting down to those details that those market managers can provide some pretty nice reports.
All right. Now, and I'll let Christy jump off with this one, but we'd like to go through our basic steps for successful forecasting and budgeting.
Yeah, I think one of the first things, we normally do is sit down and whether you're going to load it on a spreadsheet or a calendar or however you're going to actually load this, is to go in and fill in the group on the books first. Because you know that those are definite. They're already out there. So you can fill those in. You can look to see on what particular date maybe will be group heavy and may displace some of your transient and kind of highlight that as well. Usually your groups tend to have a little bit of a lower ADR, so that's going to affect your revenue when you have days or weeks or months that are group heavy. And then also keep in mind, just the back of your mind, to account for a little bit of attrition within those groups. So even though they're group on the books and they have this many, you may have some group fall off where you can fill in the blank with some maybe higher rated transient business. So keep that in the back of your mind as well.
Right, perfect. And then once oh, sorry, go ahead, Christy.
No, I was going to ask if you want to talk about the special events.
Love to. All right, so once you have your group on the books all mapped out for next year, and as Christy said, that really is your starting point. That's your base. That's already on the books, and that's what you're going to yield around. Get that layered in. Then we want to add on our special events, because those are known entities, right? We know the demand or the lack of demand that's going to be associated in general with these special events, and that gives you a very good starting point to start whittling down the rest of your days as you're going through the file. So get all those loaded in, your transient expectations for your special events. And then lastly, we get to our just kind of day by day, segment by segment expectations. And the reason this is the final step is because this business tends to have a shorter booking window, and it's essentially going to be infilling around, like I mentioned, the known entities like the groups and the high demand special events. One note of caution, though, is on dates where you're forecasting or budgeting to sell out, make sure that the segments and rates that you're budgeting actually align with your strategy. So this is a really good way to execute some checks and balances against next year's rate and distribution strategy. And it may even highlight some dates that call for extra restrictions or more rate that you hadn't previously noticed. Okay, now for some things to avoid. Common budgeting mistakes. We've all made them, and honestly, sometimes they are unavoidable given how many cooks can end up in this particular kitchen. But with that said, here are our top 3.
First one that I always look at is when someone tries to straight line increases. So you hear, okay, we're going into the budgeting process, and you hear, okay, I think we're going to look for a 3 or 5% growth in occupancy and rate. But is that realistic? Are you looking at the market? Are you taking that step back, evaluating this year's performance? What worked, what didn't work, what drove the most bookings, what had the highest profit? So for you just to be able to say, we're going to grow budget by 3%, I think that's a big mistake. I think you have to take a look at everything first and then finish your budget, finish your forecast, and then see what % increase, or unfortunately, sometimes what % decrease, depending on the market conditions, the budget ends up calculating to.
Right, and kind of in line with that, number 2 on our list of biggest mistakes is backing into totals. I know this one can be especially difficult to avoid, but it's just always so painful to see this happen. Luckily, utilizing the layered process that we've discussed and all the data that you hopefully have on hand, it's possible to at least present a very strong case against this particular result. Unfortunately, it's sometimes a reality, but it is definitely not an approach that should be utilized as a first option. You need to start from ground zero and build your way up into your budget and expectations, not start with a number and figure out how to back into that total.
And then the third one we always hear is, not being realistic about post-renovation growth. So we've got, an owner or management company that puts a lot of money into the hotel, so they automatically think that equals an increase in forecast, an increase in revenue, an increase in production. But you have to take a step back as well. Did the renovation, will it create market demand? Will it create value for your property? Did it bring you up to a level higher than your comp set, or did it produce the value that now you're equal to what you were comparing to your comp set? And then also, what type of renovation? If you spent $2 million on a pool, but the majority of your weekday business is business travel. Does that renovation actually create value for the business traveler? So great, you can increase your weekend rate, but if your weekend is 20% of your business, how does that affect the other 80% of your business? So you just have to look at the renovation, and we all love renovations, but how does that actually affect the value of your property from your market segment, individual market segment point of view?
Perfect. I think that we have just discussed budget season quite enough at this point. Right. I know everybody's really excited to get that process underway, I'm sure. But we'd like to kind of pivot a bit, change directions, and discuss the shortening booking windows. I know that is another big pain point for all of our fellow revenue managers and just hoteliers in general. And like Christy will help you take a look at, kind of what's going on with that situation, and then how you can attempt to deal with it and counteract it.
Thanks. Well, we certainly know that everyone is using their mobile phone more and more, through the years and as time goes by. And right now, what we're looking at is half of all OTA bookings are now done via a mobile device. So are we strategizing to be able to use that in our favor? Are we running mobile discounts? Do we have the content that we need for the mobile? Is our brand.com website mobile friendly? So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those mobile travelers, but also keep in mind that when people book on their mobile device, a lot of times maybe they're in transit somewhere, and that's where it starts to see that booking window shrink down a little bit. So 80% of travelers in the US search for trips using their app, even when the actual booking is made elsewhere. So they may use their desktop, but 80% of travelers are searching on the app. And then how many of them just go ahead and book when they're driving into a city or driving by a hotel? So we have to make sure that we're going after these mobile travelers. Okay, and then with the booking windows getting shorter and shorter, it's creating some challenges for us. It makes it harder to forecast. You have to start tracking the booking window. 10 days out, how many reservations am I getting? 7 days out, 3 days out, 1 day. How many same-day reservations? It's amazing lately the amount of hotels that we're hearing that are getting 30 or 40 reservations made same-day or walk-ins when you wouldn't have expected that in years past. So you have to know your trends. You have to really keep track of those. And then do you have to use, with the challenge number 2, guests expect the lower rates closer to the arrival dates. What they're expecting are the flash sales, the sale tonight rates, the opaques, the budgets, anything that's kind of bringing that rate down. And that has become a bit of a challenge too. Are we training the customer to wait to the last minute to book? And then challenge number 3, if you do drop your rates, those who booked early want that discounted rate. Do we have problems with the front desk and somebody's checking in and they're holding up that mobile device, their cell phone, and they're saying, hey, I see your rate here is lower, $25 lower than what I paid. I want that discounted rate as well. So those have become real challenges right now in the market. So what are the solutions? So the solutions: track the booking patterns of the hotel. Know on a given Tuesday that, I might get 20 walk-ins, so I can forecast that. I can anticipate that. Track the lead time by day of the week. I get more walk-ins on Friday than I get on Monday. Know that. Know your tracking patterns of your hotel. And be sure to separate the holiday lead time. So which holidays are more of a drive holiday, the 4th of July or Labor Days, where you'll have more drive market because those booking windows tend to be shorter. Or what holidays have the lead time? People book in well in advance for Christmas travel, for New Year's Eve travel. They have specific plans. They know where they want to be. And usually those lead times are a little bit longer. Don't panic. So knowing that the booking windows are shrinking and it's Monday, and for Friday you have 50 rooms left to sell and you forecasted a sellout and you're starting to panic on Monday, do I need to put a flash sale in? Do I need to drop the rate? Well, if you've got your trends tracked and you know that you can pick up 50 rooms within 3 days of arrival on a given Friday in March, no, it's not time to panic yet. So be careful using the flash sales. Don't panic sell, and don't start dropping the rate too quickly. And then maybe instead of dropping rate, you can offer value adds as last minute discounts, or there are room upgrades available. Can you put in a late checkout for a Friday night? You know, book on Friday, get a late checkout on Saturday. And that might be a great value to some of the last minute travelers. Try not to discount below the advanced purchase discount. So let that be the lowest discount that you offer. And those are the advanced purchase discounts that we put on if you book 30 days out, if you book 7 days out, 14 days out, really kind of depending on your market. Which we try to put those out there, make them non-refundable. And that way we've got kind of the base on the books. We know what's coming in. We know those reservations are locked down. And then when we have the guests that are at the front desk and they're saying, hey, you know, I booked the advanced purchase discount and now I'm seeing the rate lower. One option might be considering only selling standard rooms with your advanced purchase discount. And that way, if you do have someone coming to the front desk and complaining, you might be able to offer them an upgrade instead of dropping their rate. And that might be a good alternative. And just make sure you train your front desk on how to respond when you have those guests who are finding lower rates elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you, Chrissy. Those are all such good solutions. And I really want to emphasize that one kind of front and center right there in the middle about offering value adds as instead of last minute discounts. That's something that we work with a lot of our hotels on, is to fight the inclination or the desire to, you know, discount to try and drum up business, because it's always easier to take away something someone got for free than it is to get them to pay more the next time. Right. So, you know, even though it can be difficult, just really consider what sort of value adds you have at your disposal that would make you a more attractive option for the guest, and maybe put a little bit of money into, you know, travel ads or display marketing or something like that that can call attention to these value adds and attack it that way versus just going after the discounts, because again, those can be a lot harder to recover from. And one other thing to consider, especially as our connectivity is exploding, we have so much more inbound, outbound travel all over the world, is, you know, look outside your typical market sources. Look at some geo data. And again, here, if just as a free reference, you could, you know, use some of your OTA reporting, see where your comp set is getting guests from, what other countries, and those typically do have a much longer booking window, you know, the foreign markets, and it's probably underutilized or underexplored. So definitely try and ascertain where some of the rest of your comp set is getting that business, or where are growing markets, and pursue there and get that longer booking window to build your base. So just looking to other markets.
Well, and also you could, oh, sorry, no, you switched, but you can also look really within, especially for the weekend, and offer maybe a residential rate or a local rate for those weekends to be able to push some of that last minute business as well. That's
right. Yeah. Really targeting your pricing and your strategy to be location specific is really important. It'll help you kind of layer in by booking window as well. So now to everyone's favorite hot topic, artificial intelligence. So I'm not here today to get into the nitty gritty of different technologies or discuss the ins and outs of various types of machine learning. That's an entirely different webinar. I do want to emphasize, though, the importance of embracing and making friends with all this new technology that has arrived on the scene. So I have a quick poll. I know some of our attendees are already utilizing various business intelligence and AI-driven systems in their revenue management, which is fantastic. But for those of you who are not, I would like to take a quick survey of the reasons why. I'll give you all about 30 seconds. Just take a look, and hopefully at least one of those reasons are applicable to your situation.
I think I like number 2, analysis paralysis. Interesting results so far.
They're actually encouraging results. So I'll give you guys a
Great.
few more seconds to answer.
Oh, there goes my number 2.
All right, so it looks like we actually pretty much have a three-way tie going here between cost, analysis paralysis, and just being comfortable with your current revenue management operations and not seeing a need for change. See a couple of people that have concerns about the learning curve as well and how this will affect their role. Okay, so based on those numbers, who actually is using revenue management tech? Different numbers keep getting kicked around, but according to some recent Skift research, 85% of hotels are currently not using any sort of revenue management technology. The other 16% that are using it is split between brand-based solutions and then independent third-party solutions, as you can see in that first graph on the left. What's more interesting though, I think, is if you look at the second and third graphs, is just how much of the actual production is coming from AI-based pricing. As you can see in the middle, about one third of rooms are being priced by an RMS, and almost half of all revenue is being generated through systems utilizing AI. So I think those are really interesting numbers, and you can really see the big players, the big properties, the brands, the big groups, they are already well into that space, and they are your competition, right? And they are pricing their rooms using artificial intelligence, as are some of your other channel competitors too. So it's here, it's being adopted. And as you can see, even though the vast majority of hotels are not using it, almost half of the revenue is being generated with it. So what about our industry as a whole? The hotel, the travel industry, and our use of technology. According to some McKinsey research from last year, the hospitality industry is in last place when it comes to levels of AI adoption. I find it interesting. We're a little bit higher when it comes to projected future adoption levels, but we are lagging pretty much every sector as a whole in our adoption of AI. So with both of those things in mind, why make friends with this new tech? There tends to be a lot of hesitancy to introduce big changes in process, but there are really so many advantages to be realized. When properly implemented, business intelligence and AI can really help increase your productivity and let you, as a hotelier or as a revenue manager, focus in other areas. So when you bring these kind of systems in, it can help automate manual tasks, streamline your reporting, which one, frees up your time, but also makes it much easier and cleaner for you to get actionable insight, right? So for a revenue manager, it will cut out some of that time that you spend compiling reports, finding the data, and let you actually spend your time analyzing it and looking at trends and really looking at your hotel's business. The tech is very good for handling day-to-day adjustments that a human being just really cannot do. You know, I know my team doesn't particularly have the time to sit there and, you know, analyze whether tomorrow's rate should be, you know, 99 or 97. Can we bump it by $2 and not have any increase to demand, but maybe bumping it by 4 would be detrimental? That's the kind of thing that AI is very good at. And those are the small incremental adjustments and influences it can have on your day-to-day that will, again, free up your time to allow you as a revenue leader, and this is kind of the big one, to focus on big picture strategy and managing by exception. So the reason really that I would like to put to you for embracing a lot of this new technology is to free up your time, let you focus on the important stuff, on the strategy, get out of the day-to-day. And I know people like to throw around the term managing by exception, but let you focus on the outliers. You know, maybe there is a big event coming up, or maybe you're looking at your really in-depth reporting and you can see these trends that need to be addressed, and it allows you to have time to do that, the stuff that a machine cannot do, that your human brain is there to do. So it really is here to work with you and make you better at your job, make you more efficient, and let you focus on the bigger picture and the strategy. So I would like to leave you with that, and open the floor up for any questions that anybody may have, whether it's about budgeting or thoughts on budgeting, booking windows. If you know any questions or thoughts, concerns you may have about utilizing some of this new technology and artificial intelligence. Any questions? All right, I'll give you guys another minute. All right, well, I would like to take that as a sign that Christy and I have answered all of your questions and solved all of your problems. I want to thank all of you for joining us today and just leave you with a few quick takeaways. We really want to emphasize investing the time in gathering data for your budgeting, getting all of your reports in place, really sitting down and taking a look at it, because even though it does add a little bit of time on the front end, it will make the process smoother and it will make your budget better, which I know we will all appreciate as we get into 2020. Budget on a day-by-day basis, preferably by segment, even if the ultimate numbers that you're submitting are going to be monthly totals. I know everybody likes to read different numbers, but to get a really accurate budget, you really do need to look at your numbers day by day and look at the different segments and how they're going to be behaving next year. Please don't straight line your budget and try to avoid backing into totals as much as you can. Be strategic about addressing the shortening booking windows. And like Christy said, don't panic, right? There's a number of ways that you can address it. And we just need to make peace with it because it's here to stay. We've got, an explosion.
Agreed.
It's the new normal. So it's just, we need to adjust to it and adjust strategy to deal with it. And that there again is just one more reason why it's so important to embrace tech, use AI to your advantage. Again, Christy was mentioning, knowing your booking windows, knowing your changing trends. That's the kind of stuff that these new systems are there for. That is why they exist, to help you process that data, get you that insight now so you see it as it's happening and you can see those shifts, and then you can work with your hotel to adjust strategy and really focus on your revenue. So with that, I don't think we have any questions. I'd like to thank you all again for joining us today. Again, I'm Nicole Adair, I'm Director of Revenue Management Services here with SHR. We are joined by my colleague, Christy Crawford. And we both thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Please don't hesitate.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts later. We always love to hear from you. Thank you.